The stuff is getting triggered. But you wouldn't even have the vision if it didn't also come with the resources to make that vision manifest. It's like a seed. If you look at a seed, if you were to open a seed and open up, you would see inside that seed is everything that seed needs to become a tree. All the nurturing, all the nourishment, all the codes, it's all there to become the sequoia tree. You see the size of a sequoia seed? It is teeny, 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 tiny. One of the biggest trees in the world starts with a seed that's like the size of a mustard seed. And in that teeny, teeny, tiny seed is everything that seed needs to become the magnificent sequoia. And the same is true with each of you. Just got to get past your own stuff. Get out of your own way. Get past the little teeny tiny beliefs that are in there messing with your head. And go here. Because this, your heart, is one of the most powerful mechanisms ever created in the universe. The human heart has the capacity to move mountains. And right now, collectively, humanity is facing a mountain. The beautiful thing is there's an army of us that know how to move mountains. And we will. And that's why you're all here. Even if you don't believe it, that's why you're here. You too can move mountains. This is what it means by having the faith of a mustard seed. That it's in every single one of us. To be free, to have the courage to make magnificent dreams come true. And those visions that each of us have, we have the ability to grow because you wouldn't have them if they didn't also come with the resources to make them come true. Because God does not make junk. Only magnificence.